Almost everything we do is powered by data centers. They stay online even when we're not. At CBRE, we know global connectivity is best delivered through globally connected strategies, providing operational excellence at scale. For us, it all comes down to a single focus: uptime. Always uptime. The art of uptime is our vision of the rapidly changing data center facility. We take a practical, innovative approach to your data center's operations, meeting you, your facility, and your organization where they are in the data center lifecycle to get the most out of your facility today while preparing for tomorrow. CBRE's global view, operating more data centers in more countries than anyone, keeps you ahead of what's next.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2021 Connect Conference Day 3, brought to you by Huawei and Cloud and Data Stream partner CBRE. Enjoy the next session.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us at this session of the Connect Conference 2021. It's a great privilege for us today to have one of the most excellent speakers in the sector here with us today, it's a great privilege for me to welcome Lee Perrin to our session this morning. By way of introduction, Lee is South African born, but he spent 14 years in the UK. And there he started his careers in data centers, literally from the ground up, with the early Norland business in the UK, and which was later acquired by CBRE. He's got more than 12 years experience within data center operations, through every step within operational roles, including to where he is now in a senior leadership position. He was also a part of the initial creation of the CBRE Data Center Solutions business across the UK, which today is the largest data center outsourced service provider, with a turnover of more than $1 billion, servicing over 45 countries, 3,000 plus technical roles, 4,000 plus DCs managed, with 99.99968% uptime, a key metric for the data and cloud industry. So now Lee strategically placed back his roots in South Africa, in South Africa focus on building the CBR data center business infrastructure through the Middle East and Africa. He's active in the regional data center associations to support larger power distribution discussions, to support the wave of growth in the digital transformation in these regions. He's also passionate in closing the skills and diversity gap in engineering, and is actively building local supply chain to grow local delivery models. And he's actually going to be talking about a topic today that considers the growth in the data center market in Africa, with a global focus and expectations. And most recently, CBRE has also joined the Digital Council Africa. A couple of things. So firstly, a big welcome to CBRE. Then, of course, also welcome home to you, Lee. It's great to have a skill like you in South Africa. And I just want to thank CBRE for their sponsorship and their support of this event, which makes it possible. It helps us to engage in dialogue around topics that is important to everybody in our sector. And then, of course, mostly thank you to you that's giving up your time to share some of your knowledge and expertise with the listeners today. Thank you, Lee. I'm going to hand over to you.
So before I start, thank you, Yanita. I think you probably presented myself a bit better than I would have done. But just to quickly recap a little bit about CBRE. and I hope it supports my views on collective and collaborative approaches when talking about the data center industry, especially for Africa. So CBRE unlocks maximum value in performance of the your data center portfolio, reducing risk through operational strategies, powered by technology and talent. Our focus is your data center's uptime. Our clients benefit from experience and best practice accumulated by us managing over 600 data centers in over 40 countries. Building our business and service offerings with the understanding from hyperscale and major operators' needs, while being their scaling partner, pushing into new territories and feeding that global digital expansion. But we don't just do this alone, right? It's a collective approach with the right partnerships. Look at our supply chain spend. I mean, we're doing like 74 billion globally. And this is built on trusted and strategic partnerships to deliver global scale with flexibility, and that's what our clients need from us. And that's really what I want to talk about today. It's a collective and a collaborative approach to the market, because that is what Africa's going to need. Africa's too big, the elephant's too big. It's a real collaborative approach to digitalize Africa. So I just want to quickly touch on a few points. Not a sales pitch, but this is where the collaborative piece comes in, right? And I'm going to be mentioning it a few times through this talk, referencing key points. Africa Data Center Association, a trade organization of data centers in the African continent. A massive theme, keep it Africa is one of our working groups at the moment. The infrastructure masons, it's a platform where executives and technical professionals have an independent, leave your name by the door forum to connect, grow, and give back. Another big theme of today. And again, thanks, UNITA, the Digital Council. We new members, very excited and very excited how we can contribute into the organization. And a big theme as well, the quality of life for Africans. And I really hope that you'll be able to look these up and join if you can. And it's an exciting growth, and especially in Africa. So just to touch on a few points, just to give the confidence to the global market and the local market that it's exciting and things are happening. We refer to the data center market in Africa in weird and wonderful ways. The final frontier, the untapped markets, connecting the final billion, the second gold rush. There's so many terms that people refer to when it comes to Africa and growth and the data center market. But in the end, it's actually just all about the people, right? It's all about the people. We're a people business, and through my leadership years, growing through the business, I've always been told it's all about the people. And it's very true in the Africa market and the data center expansion. So there's a very nice report from Exelam that reported through ADCA through one of our white papers. And it really brings all the demographic stats into one quick read. The report's actually about infrastructure, but it explains the demographic impacts. Africa's the fastest growing population with the young and the youngest continent, with a median age of 18. It's 42% less than the closest continent. 25% of kids between 0 and 4 live in Africa. By 2030, 20% of the population will live in Africa. By 2040, the population, half of the population will live in cities. By 2050, the population will double from what we currently at in terms of 1.3 billion to 2.6 billion. So again, it's all about the people. Right? Everyone deserves the right to a digital life. And it's exciting to see how we are digitizing Africa and what benefits and enhancements that will bring to the continent. It's crazy sometimes speaking to friends and everyone's negative about Africa and politics and everything. But if you look at what is coming to Africa in terms of digitalizing Africa, it's a massive success story, and it's exciting to watch. And I think we take so much for granted when we've had a digital life, that we find it hard to comprehend how globally connected we are through our phones, working from home, maybe even in a global position, and how rural locations can improve and thrive through just the digitalized Africa. So if you just look at the requirements for data centers, it's completely aligned with the African stats that we just spoke about now. And it is really attracting global investors, massive data center operators, and hyperscaler data centers. We have data sovereignty pushes, bringing everything back into Africa. Everything was normally supported in Europe. Urbanization, demographic growth, economic diversification, low broadband penetration, leaving a lot of room for market share available. At CBRE, we talk to major players while supporting their market entrance plans into Africa and consulting their curiousness or cautiousness of Africa. So now that we're seeing global interest tapping into the African market with massive investments, all wanting market share of a growing demographic and market penetration. So the question really is how can we ensure that Africa benefits from these mature markets to improve local skill, small businesses, and local infrastructure? I mean, if we just look at probably just one major topic that I'm going to focus on, and I'm going to suggest another, talent and power. If we just look at talent, resources, I mean, we're not short of talent in Africa. I mean, we're just not experienced enough. We haven't been around long. The data centers are very new, very, very unique, very, very efficient. They're great. But there's really a war on talent, and it's not an Africa thing. It's a global thing. The data center market is very new. But if you just think in Africa, it is a very, very new market. And how will we physically resource this very technical and very critical market? And like I said, it's not an Africa problem. It's just that I think it amplifies greatly in Africa, especially with the amount of activity we're seeing entering the market. Globally, we have senior data center talent leaving the industry quicker than we're filling it, or not having enough time for all these skills to transfer. So we're really, really losing that talent. And it's been addressed in various ways in some of the mature market, big apprenticeship schemes, for example. But this is the major focus for us in CBRE. We transfer in approximately about 1,000 data center roles per year. And we actually considered the largest data center recruiter, just purely for that fact, with our total headcount. In Africa, we have great manufacturing, great critical environment industries with transferable skills, which is amazing. We have the options. But how do we adapt and feed the overall data center resourcing need? So, like I mentioned, I sit in the Infrastructure Nation African chapter, and they have a platform where we can introduce talent into the market through scholarships, which is a really great opportunity. But I think Africa really has an opportunity to leapfrog. We hear this term a lot now. We can really leapfrog if we can just get into the education systems, even adapting apprenticeship schemes. We've got some really technical apprenticeship schemes. I for one, went through a multi-skilled apprenticeship. We can slightly manipulate these and add topics into these to be able to feed the facilities management or the data center sector. But then it's also down to us to really be able to try and manage and support the practical experience required to bring these young technical roles through our industry. And another topic I just want to touch on, but very briefly, and I hope you can sort of take time today to see the panel that we got, and it's really focused around power. Power. Yes, we've got a pure infrastructure, but it's how can Africa really benefit from this power-hungry industry that's actually moving in. It just feels like it's amazing opportunity for the continent to have a wave of new industry moving in that will be providing the infrastructure demand and now need the supply. It's the other way around, right? We got the demand in, we just now need to supply this whole new industry. This is a great opportunity for local infrastructure. And if this is done right and we learn from mature markets, Africa can again leapfrog mature markets and help local infrastructure conditions rather than hinder and support the race to net zero emission targets. I just want to say thank you for listening, and please reach out if anything resonates with you. I'm always happy to build good strategic partnerships in the industry. Thank you.
Cool.
Thanks, Lee, and thank you very much for that insightful presentation. I wanted to just take a moment and sort of speak to you a little bit about one of the things that you say that you're so passionate about, and that's on the skills side. You know, obviously it's a big concern, you know, that there simply isn't enough technical skills in sub-Saharan Africa. And I think, you know, the data center market poses such a tremendous opportunity for people to participate in this sector, but, you know, a lot more can be done. Do you have very specific ideas around how we can develop this market and what it is that we can do to grow this sector?
Yeah, I think the main thing is attracting the talent first, right? It's they always refer to it. We need to make the data center industry sexy, right? So we need to try and guide the young talent into the data center market, and I think it's slowly happening. There's obviously too many competing industries, but again, I think it's getting into the education system, starting to plant the seeds at that point, to educate them about the data center need. Everyone talks about the cloud, but I think if you start talking to the younger groups, the cloud is the data center, right? So we need to look after the data center. We need to make sure the data center stays on. Otherwise, you've got no cloud, and you're not texting, WhatsApping, and Facebooking. So I think when we need to invest a lot of our energy and time in that area, and starting to bring that industry, starting to bring that level of people or groups into the industry. Always risky and a concern having youngsters in a very live, critical environment. But I think that's where the ownership comes back to us, right? We have to find a way that we can physically introduce and create it's creating a pool, right? We don't have a pool of people to select from if we don't have the pool. So we need to start creating that pool, and even taking looking at other industries, transferable skill industries. So we don't want to be robbing Peter to pay Paul, but everyone needs a holistic view on how can we separate and space out all these various critical disciplines. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it certainly does. And I'm going to ask you something that's slightly more controversial now, and you can refuse to answer it. But do you think that government has got a role to play in skills development? You know, I mean, you know, my background, you know, historically was like sort of from the fixed line sector, and you know, we feel strongly that, you know, government certainly has a role to play, and But do you think that that's the same for our sector and the data center side? And is there room for specific policies to be implemented? That's the one side of the question. The other side I want to ask you about is just sort of, do you think that there's enough content available? Training collateral available that exists out there that can take young people through this learning curve?
So the first is, yes, government is 100% involved or part of this, right? If you just look at in the UK, there's an apprenticeship scheme, right? Everyone gets involved in the apprenticeship scheme. You get tax rebates being involved. It's such a simple mechanism to push through the digital environment, right, or the industry. If we had a pool of apprenticeships where companies are jumping on and contributing to, but the government is, I dare to say, funding, right? But it's if forget about the funding mechanism, it's the policy. It's about getting policy, having certain numbers, and focusing on education system that says policy is you introduce the technical agendas or digital infrastructure agendas. And that's I think again, it's a global issue, right? You go to university, there's not a data center syllabus, right? There's not it's electrical, mechanical, and that's it. What you do with that knowledge is your path. But we should start it on the first bit where you're starting a data center route. Here's all the knowledge. It's a policy. It's a faculty. It's all started. There's frameworks in place. And just to address the material question is there's a lot out there, but it all costs a lot of money. It's UK or it's US based platforms or learning centers with associated materials. And I think that's something that us at CBRE, what we do well is we partner with such industries, because we're talking about bringing in thousands of data center people in a year. So we certify, we train, we constantly recertify, we track gaps, and then we constantly do continuous improvement on closing all those gaps. And that's the only way that from us as an operational perspective, we manage that risk. It's not that you just get a training quickly, you get the book, and then you're a data center person, right? It's the constant life cycle attention that an operative needs to ensure that they can manage risk. So it's definitely not a quick fix handbook scenario.
And do you think that we're doing enough, and that there's just so much demand that we can't keep up, or do you think that there's still a lot of room for expanding the work that we do, or do we find like in most places that there's pockets of excellence and then in other places not?
I don't think we're ever going to be I don't think we're going to be close enough to resolving a talent gap or feeding the market, right? If you just think of the last year and a half, our COVID years, right? The data center industry has accelerated at such a pace. How do you accelerate that with the talent piece in parallel? We just have to it's like everyone's got seatbelts on, and how do we accommodate, right? And and everyone's, again, this is the whole collective approach that we look at. It's just everyone's in this together, right? And that's where, again, the ownership comes to us again, that, do you just keep on taking data center people from other data centers? Or does everyone just slow down, look at the industry, start training and bringing up the industry with the growing digital infrastructure? You can't just expect that you're going to be picking or cherry picking the best data center talent out there to suit yourself, right? You're just creating another hole.
Right. And it's like, I like with what you're saying, that it's like we're all in this together. And it's, like also what you said about the ADCA, it's like leave your company at the door. Here we've got a problem that needs to be solved. It's a very big problem. If we're going to keep pace with the rest of the world, we have to develop the skill. So just in closing, I'm going to ask you a very different question. From a CBRE point of view, you've been very humble in your presentation, but if you have to choose one thing that sets you apart as a company, and how you think you're different to any competitor out there, what would that be? And you're not allowed to say it's you.
No, so my perspective, my personal perspective, there's obviously the company's got the whole, the whole sales pitch, but it's mass data, right? We manage a lot of facilities. You learn so much, right? And that's with data, with experience, with mass numbers. It gives you experience. If you one data center operator, you can have the biggest data center operator in the world, but you got one, right? How long do you have to be alive to get knowledge, to get wisdom, right? You have to go through. Have to get some cuts and bruises and bumps, right? The same way as in your leadership, your journey. You learn through painful experiences that you had to go through, that you got out the other side. Everyone was a winner. And to me, it's just the mass data. Yeah. We learn so much through, and there's so much that surrounds us. We learn about assets, right? We learn. You can imagine how many brands of the same type of UPS we've got in over 600 data centers. We can start predicting failures.
Yeah.
There's so much that you can do with big numbers, and I think that's what really differentiates us in the market, because one, we can start analyzing and predicting or whatever we need to do in infrastructure, but it comes with all that experience. Yeah. It's flying hours, right? It's flying hours. How many, if you're one pilot, you can only fly one plane, right? If you thousands of pilots, you're flying a lot of hours in the air. You're quickly learning.
Yeah. And I think it's like there's access to this diverse knowledge, because it's just this differentness of which, all the data centers are built upon. And it's like you say, one data center, one focus, one set of rules, one set of failures. And you've probably dealt with things that a lot of people didn't even expect and didn't even see coming. But
or even that a manufacturer didn't expect, right? A small component failure that they never thought was going to happen. Yeah. You can find it, fix it, feed it through your entire business, and stop something from happening. And that comes to play with talent, with knowledge, with experience, supply chain, and relationships.
Yeah, incredible. This has been an incredibly and interesting conversation, and touching on a topic that's also very dear to the Digital Council Africa's heart, which is skills development. We can bring out and pull all the stats on the size of the economy and all of these things and how many jobs we can create, but like you say, if we don't put the fundamentals in place, and that's to educate and to empower people to take up those jobs, we're going to fail before we start. So thank you also to you and the team for all the hard work that you guys are doing in that regard, and rolling up your sleeves. CBRE, from what I've learned from you and my engagement with you, is that it's not a company that's scared to get involved. It sort of puts its money where its mouth is. It talks and walks the talk. And I also want to take a moment to thank you for your support of the Digital Council, and this event, and also joining as a member, buying into the bigger picture. And I'm looking forward to including CBRE in all our future conversations around data centers. You've got a lot to bring to the table. Welcome to your seat at the table, and we look forward to ongoing engagement with you.
Thank you. It's really a pleasure.
Ladies and gentlemen, we trust you enjoyed the session. Thank you to all our sponsors and partners for helping us bring this event to you. Please click on the next link to join the following session.